Ascendant in Gemini. When we say that someone is of Gemini, it is because he was born between May 21st and June 20th, approximately the period in which the sun transits that sign. Instead, to know if the ascendant is in Geminis, it is necessary to know the time and place of birth, because it is the sign that appeared on the horizon at the east point at the moment of the first breath, and suggests developing talents of communication and great mental openness. Life proposes to become light and unjudged in order to be able to accept ideas diametrically different from its own. It is also likely that some brother will challenge you to accept someone completely different. Every ascendant in Geminis will experience great ambivalences in his life by perceiving that there is no single truth, that there isn't a single way of understanding things. He feels incomplete and has difficulty defining a vocation or a unique life project. His dissatisfaction can be a source of anxiety, or motivate him to always look for something new and to investigate in various spaces and ideologies, where he must open his mind and develop the ability to listen to include different ideas. It will be necessary to overcome prejudices to communicate with very changing people who reflect their own contradictions. Destiny surrounds him with a twin vibration that connects him with anxious and indecisive people who do not allow him to commit or concretize stable projects. In these dual situations, life proposes to him to confront his own contradictions, since no decision is complete or satisfactory to him. You will have to figure out how to link and associate what seems seemingly irreconcilable or incomplete. Surrounded by movements, by people who come and go, and who do not promise him the stability he desires, his daily life is full of movements and transfers. He may even live and work in two very distant places and suffer the obligation to move more than he wishes, or even have two or more professions. It is worth differentiating. If you're the moon in Gemini, you need the word and the rational logic. If you are of Gemini, you are bound and sociable. If you're an ascendant in Gemini, you should learn to communicate and negotiate with those who think differently. The more you pretend to control uncertainty, the more you will witness scenes of dispersion, of games, and of infinite possibilities and variables to integrate the Geminian, open, changing, and binding. The more it rejects the versatile and lightweight, the more it will attract instability, inconsistencies, irresponsibility, and deception. He usually has a double bond with adolescents, typical representatives of this sign, whom he tends to reject, but life seems to surround him with them. In general, it revolves around topics associated with brothers, ties, cousins, friends, communication, writing, games, movements, travel, and teaching, so you can go discovering that the more restless and lightweight you become, the more creative and interesting your life will be. In your destiny of openness and change, no solution should be taken too seriously, nor will you find a single way of looking at things. For you must understand that nothing or nobody is unique or complete. Many times a brother represents a great challenge of integration because he is someone very different in his thoughts and in his life choices. Gemini is a mutable sign, and like other such signs, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, the person must accept that his destiny is articulated by an order that operates beyond his conscious desire, where each experience or person, however dual or ambivalent it may seem, brings him learning about his own personal antinomias. Geminis ascending proposes to discover himself increasingly open and binding in order to become a great communicator who judges or censors nothing. In addition, he organizes his astrological houses and experiences in a particular way, with the exception of some exceptions to birth cards, in which a phenomenon called intercepted signs takes place. This may make not all houses match these elements. Anyway, the ascendant matrix and its corresponding distribution of elements and signs works. You only have to add punctual themes of the sign that appears different as an information that is added, but that does not disable what is described below. How to plant the different learners of an ascendant in Geminis. Individuality scenarios, House 1 in Geminis. Affectionate and inclusive personal style or superficial and accommodating. House 1 in Geminis suggests a dispersed and changing style to go out to the world because she is interested in many things. You will have to discover that your personality needs to start without knowing much where it is going. Take life as a game in which you are changing ideas and asking to go discovering new ways to understand and to live in the world. The person with ascendant in Geminis desires to have clarity and solidity when acting, but very unfortunately, he is observed dubious in each execution. Far from deciding with firmness and certainty, he inevitably finds himself restless and always looking for new variables or interested in some other option. Nothing ends up being enough for him. Before each decision he makes, new ideas and new doubts arise. Because there is always a different variable that he wishes to be more interesting, he suffers from his own contradictions and is pressured to be coherent and know what he wants. Instead of forcing yourself to always be the same as yourself, you must begin to accept your changing and restless style that always leads you to change your minds and desire many things at once. His life will be plagued with scenes that require him to adapt. His destiny invites him always to move, to listen, and to have to communicate with children, childish and restless people who can exhaust him or dull him and lead him to harden, or also to hide in a Libyan style, separated, cold, and distant. He usually structures himself into a rigid and uncommitted personality. To avoid being confused in his doubts, he can fill his life with banal activities, where he plays to entertain himself to forget his own existential ambivalences, or wander in insubstantial or playful activities full of games, of words, of superficialities, and gossip. The temptation of the charlatan distances him from his possibility of linking those who remained uncommunicated, or of bringing together worlds that need to meet. At an integrated level, this ascendant can develop true communication talents by becoming the one who best listens to those who think differently, and who is most willing to learn. To truly listen and learn, you will need to empty your convictions, because any previous idea will not allow a true listening. He will have to abandon all certainty to let himself be transformed seriously by the new ideas. The more you are allowed to listen with an open mind, free from preconceptions, the more you will be able to transmit the information without contaminating it with your personal opinions. It will develop into professions associated with communication, and it would be ideal for you to devote yourself to being a journalist, writer, speaker, lawyer, dissertant, or teacher. House 5 in Libra. Seductive creativity or freaky and deceptive style. The fifth sign of the ascendant Gemini is Libra and suggests a seductive and complacent style. The composing and harmonious Libyan quality enables him not to react untimely or respond immediately to adverse opinions. It also allows you to play while exploring what attitudes and what responses you will give to each relationship. Knows how to harmoniously accompany each person, however different they may be. Libra knows how to put itself in the place of each other, communicate, listen, and seduce with a cordial and gentle style that gives you the possibility to relate with very different people and always be the one who knows the right person to do some task or to something in particular. At a level of tension, Libra makes him feel insecure and exacerbates his tendency to eternal doubt. They oscillate between very antagonistic desires, which lead you to dilate your decisions. Or Libra can lead you all the time to compare yourself to others, feel less, and inhibit your authentic expressiveness. In the area of personal security, Libra may tickle you and trap you in comparisons, envy, and competences. You must recognize that if you are approached by people who stand out or are important, far from being inhibited in comparison, you will need to learn the qualities that these relationships teach you for your life. If it is prevented from being equal, it is removed from learning and being nurtured in its bonds. The temptation to compare and envy may be rooted in a relationship with a brother who left marks of insecurity and competitiveness. House 5 in Libra also suggests a complementary, harmonious, and pleasant bond with your children, which may be misinterpreted as excessive lightness, to educate them with little capacity to set limits or assume the role of authority, or may also lead you to distance yourself from them for matters or of the couple that hinder the filial relationship. House 9 in Aquarius. Revolutionary beliefs or dispersion to synthesize and vocational discontinuity. The ninth sign of the ascendant Geminis is Aquarius and suggests a revolutionary belief structure, which can manifest itself in an original and creative vocation. Aquarium in the House 9, also associated with abroad, proposes the possibility of developing creative and cutting-edge projects in other countries, or at a level of tension, to make you feel exiled and uninhabited when traveling or connecting with other cultures. At a level of tension, Aquarius makes him too superficial in his thoughts, with little commitment to support his ideologies and skeptical of any path of self-knowledge or questioning any learning space. The accelerated and unproliferating Aquarian quality does not know how to find its place in the world, does not surrender or trust. Lacking vocation and sense, he is alienated from society and its values. His accelerated thinking overloads him with inconsistent thoughts. Thinking too much alienates him in his own mental madness. He is isolated in his exile and in his existential anguish, and instead of communicating, he becomes increasingly strange and silent because he feels that no one will understand him. At an integration level, Aquarius, free and creative, looks at the world in a very different way from familiar, and has a great ability to resigning outdated thoughts and open up to futuristic ways of understanding life. He accepts the circulation of different ideologies because he intuits that there is not one truth and that there are many ways to perceive the world. He does not grasp ideas, but enjoys communicating them. He conveys what he hears without appropriating any thought. He only reproduces it. It communicates strange and deep knowledge in an accessible way, so that new ideas can circulate freely and reach more people. It transmits information without issuing moral judgment, without qualifying it as good or bad, and allows the circulation of the most diverse ideologies. Aquarius's freedom and detachment free him from rigid certainty and make him a seeker of new ways to live religion. He needs to find his own way of feeling God, for his God does not judge us as sinners. They tend to rebel against traditional religions for feeling that, far from freeing us and helping us to be more loving, they fill us with guilt and fears. Scenarios of materialization. House 2 on Cancer. Committed generation or child generation and economic dependence. The second sign of the ascendant Gemini is Cancer and suggests encouraging himself to make money with what he loves, with activities that nourish himself and his environment. However, at a level of stress, Cancer in House 2 gives you too much susceptibility and emotional cyclothymia that impede your ability to feel valued and valuable. If the ascending sign is the being manifesting itself in destiny, the next scenario, House 2, is what it needs to generate in order to be able to feel that it is somebody. The ascendant in Geminis needs more than anyone else to learn to love oneself, more to material abundance. Cancer qualities of sensitivity, empathy, and closeness will be critical to generating money and economic stability. If you work on something that doesn't do you good or love, it will be difficult to peace or material abundance because Cancer needs commitment in its tasks to generate money. You will have to learn more than anyone else to trust, work, and invest in what you love, beyond the negative opinions of your surroundings. Cancer leads you to intuit what others need to hear, and, if you know how to convey it, you can use it to love each person you work with and generate closeness with your clients, readers, patients, or students. The more loving you are to yourself and others, the more your name and your individual power will stand out. In some cases, it can symbolize working with the family, and you should be careful that this does not hinder your project of working with what you love. At a tense level, Cancer makes him immature and dependent on the family economy, and tends to hand over the power of his investments to others because of personal insecurity or because he feels unable to solve his economy on his own. His fear and subjectivity in administering himself lead him to invest in inappropriate projects or to lend money to immature people simply because he loves them. Cancer locks him in to protect him and makes him childish or greedy, with difficulty enjoying what he has and with a tendency to stay out of good business for inconsistent fears or irrational anger. House 6 in Scorpio, everyday commitment of transformation or dark existential chaos. The sixth sign of the ascendant Gemini is Scorpio and suggests complex and contradictory ways of ordering your daily routine, cyclotomia in your eating habits, and intensity with whom you share working routines. Scorpio reveals complexity to incarnate his body and difficulty to acquire healthy ways of eating and exercising, pursues complex diets, and lives tends to sustain them or abandons them avasalled by Scorpion voracity. The exaggeration with which your body lives can lead you to abuse medicines, foods, or suffer addictions. The heavier and denser his body becomes, the more complicated the agility that his Gemini destiny offers him. The routine and order of his daily life shifts between moments of relaxation or obsessive intensity, where he wants to order everything relentlessly. It is difficult for him to discern, to discard, and he tends to be restrained and accumulative of unnecessary things. He must make conscious efforts to relieve his belongings. At an integrated level, the transformative sign of Scorpio in the House 6, also associated with the daily work related to punishment, often leads you to take on with much commitment your work tasks. He works intensely and may suffer envy and manipulation in his day-to-day employment, which will require him to develop a wise control so as not to be overwhelmed by his working environment. Your fraternal style may make it difficult for you to set boundaries on time or to know how to distribute and delegate duties among colleagues or employees. It often ends up taking over too many things and performing tasks that do not suit it so as not to generate greater labor conflicts. His connection with nature, with plants and animals, is through Scorpio. This makes him intense and healing, but also destructive and discontinuous. It is often difficult for him to have pets and plants because then he does not have the constancy to take care of them. House 10 in Pisces, resonant profession and empathy, or work confusion that dilutes your profession. The 10th sign of the Ascendant in Geminis is Pisces and suggests the need to develop empathy to fit into society, because the more resonant, healing, and solidarity your work will be, the better you will feel. At a level of tension, the fish quality confuses and disorderly when facing or holding jobs and makes it difficult for you to know what you want to work on. He often walks through different careers or works in confusing and chaotic environments. His difficulty in finding a consistent workplace leads him to feel immature and failed in his profession. Lack of clarity about the social place can also become a talent to feel that many jobs are possible because it does not need to crystallize into one task. If it is allowed to recognize that he longs to work on many things, Pisces proposes to play the work game without preconceptions about how a job should be and helps him to dilute the social norms that impose that we must have a single solid and unchangeable profession and sustain it throughout life. The Piscian quality, loose and soft, proposes a profession that emphasizes the sensitivity and acceptance of the different, allowing each to develop in its times and forms. Pisciana's work includes and promotes everyone's opinion, input of ideas. In addition, it can generate a working environment that allows everyone to flourish, as it respects the opening times of people who, like flower petals, can open without rushing, allowing the colors and scents of each individual to unfold. If the opportunity is given to work, including the sensitivity and loving approval, Piscian usually generates beautiful working spaces of affectionate acceptance and trust. House 10 and her relaxed fish energy also symbolize the bond with her father and suggests a loving and empathic relationship, but that may have been complicated by being someone excessively loose or blurred. Likewise, it represents the figures of authority that tend to be diluted or unclear. It is difficult to give authority to their bosses, because Pisces, oceanic and empathic, generates soft and unconventional ways of relating to rules and authority. Link scenarios, House 3 in Leo. Love to express yourself and allow yourself to play with creative thoughts and words, or selfish fights for wanting to impose personal opinion, genuine relationship or ego's competition with brothers. The third sign of the Ascendant in Geminis is Leo, and highlights the importance that it will have in his life to develop in areas of communication, where it will be fundamental to encourage to be genuine in expressing and opining with original and creative words. He discovers how vital he feels when he can say what he thinks and is encouraged to be genuine. You must trust in showing your thoughts in negotiating, writing, speaking, learning, and teaching, although he usually prefers to isolate himself. Leo in House 3 invites him to always bind, and the first great learning to follow a bond and not cut the relationship will be with his brothers. In the area of brothers, Leo, the sign of monarch and self-reference, suggests a meaningful bond with them, who live as very different or very demanding people. Brotherly relationships will be her biggest challenge of learning to be a bridge, as she must find common points to reach agreements in situations that seem irreconcilable. Relationship with brothers is an inexhaustible source of self-knowledge. It is the great journey of self-discovery. And if you cut that relationship, you would also be rejecting important information about yourself. As you mirror in your brothers, you see yourself in how you speak, how you judge, and how you condemn them. Many times one avoids the fraternal encounter because one feels overwhelmed or cheated and others idealize or delegate too important things. But it is always crucial to be encouraged to remain in a healthy relationship. If you do not learn to relate without classifying them as good or bad, you tend to contaminate all your other bonds with that load. The healthier the story with his brother, the better his life will flow. Leo in House 3 suggests that the heart and center of his personality are amalgamated with the identity of the brother. If there were no brothers, maybe there was some unrecognized brother, or their parents lost some baby or pregnancy, or it can generate a very close bond with some friend you live as a brother and in whom you project a lot of your own identity. At a level of tension, Leo in House 3 warns of a certain tendency to hand over the center of his own life to others, for feeling that when compared, he will always lose. His education probably set up from comparing with some brother, and left a painful mark of comparison with others, which inhibits his own self-confidence. They may even have raised him by forcing him to match his emotions or abilities with those of his brother, comparing possibilities, talents, and also pains and difficulties. The Ascendant in Geminis must transfer this tendency to the comparison with which he was raised, in order to be able to express his true feelings without fear of judgment, and to bind himself without contempt or envy. When he manages to overcome his inhibitory tendency to compare, he can discover himself as he is without having to rival or despise others. He must overcome his first marks of competitive learning to realize that in each link he discovers talents that he alone would not have developed. House 7 in Sagittarius, synthesis and meaning or uncompromised experimentation in pair. The seventh sign of the Ascendant Gemini is Sagittarius, and suggests the expansion that is revealed in his life when he opens up to being in a couple. The Ascendant in Geminis tends to vary in their desires, and often find it difficult to define or remain in a bond. At one level of tension, it warns of the tendency to give too much energy to another's projects, in disgrace of one's own. As the Ascendant in Gemini generally doesn't know what he wants, he can easily get lost in his partner's plans and forget about his own aspirations. He minimizes his desire and gives his relationships the last word, and can spend a lot of time idealizing the other's decisions and his own ambitions. Sagittarius in a couple can also symbolize distance, and can attract couples who are always far away or inaccessible, or fall in love with people who are impossible to reach because of their social class, culture, or religion. At an integration level, the couple seems to make sense and organize it. He is struck by people who radiate security and optimism, faithful representatives of the Sagittarius energy. The other invites you to trust, expand, define, and synthesize to be able to choose. His partners often show themselves confident and seem to know very well what they want, and admits that the Ascendant in Gemini can afford to continue doubting, playing, asking, experimenting with new variables. Sagittarius proposes living a couple where jealousy and fear are minimized, to live a love of adventures and permissions to be more and more who one wishes to be. House 11 in Aries, initiative or combativity with friends. The 11th sign of the Ascendant Gemini is Aries, and suggests that groups and friends turn him on and motivate him with creative initiatives. However, at a level of tension, He warns that he may feel invaded or overwhelmed by others. At a level of tension, Aries in House 11 warns of a certain tendency to fighting, anger, and fierce competitions in groups of belonging. The Arian quality challenges him to relate, being careful not to reproduce childish competences that generate unnecessary anger. The presence of combative and choleric friends challenges him not to take care of foreign anger, for anger belongs to the one who expresses it. It is possible to let the other person get angry without taking responsibility for each complaint or reacting to each fight. Not being receptive to strangers is understanding that no one can make you angry, because feeling like that is your own responsibility. Even if it gives him laziness or fear, Aries in the 11th house shows that it is crucial that he opens up to the creativity of his environment, because there he finds inspiration and new projects. If he is allowed to listen to the projects of others, Aries activates in his life a particular creativity that would not appear if he remains isolated. When enabled in other projects and interacting in groups, it feels circulating a particular vitality as in no other living space. Emotional scenarios, House 4 in Virgo. Security and emotional intelligence or demanding criticism with the family and with the mother. The fourth sign of the Ascendant Geminis is Virgo. It gives you a meticulous and observing emotional base that provides you with a secure foundation not to overflow before the multiple vivings of your life. Solvency and emotional security to play variables without losing yourself, and humbly position yourself in the place of a learner with intelligence to accept yourself, even ignorant, and remain receptive to educate yourself in everything you do not yet know. Also, the House 4 in Virgo connects him with his family history and empowers him to understand his lineage in a clear, sensible, and illusory way, to clarify family lies. Rearrange your own story from concrete facts. She needs to understand her family past, discriminate and dismantle hereditary preconceptions in order to rebuild her own family with more realistic criteria. The bond with his parents, and, in particular, with his mother, could feel demanding and distant. His home, restrictive and lacking in abundance or affection. The family demands more from him than he can give, and demands greater commitment and coherence than he may have. Furthermore, Virgo can make it too hard and judgmental of own and alien vulnerability. In his emotional base, there is an obsessive virgin and criticism who repeats the distrust of his family memory. His legacy values closure, seriousness, and predictability. And when he perceives his own instability, he censors himself for feeling his emotions totally inconsistent. When you are perceived trapped in your paradoxical feelings, you are anxious and want to control yourself and cling even more to your habits. But they only generate more interference and will lead you to feel even more insecure and to become harder and censoring. Capricorn in House 8. Conflicts make him grow and mature, or when life confronts him through crisis, defends himself, becoming more rigid and judgmental. The 8th sign of the Ascendant Gemini is Capricorn, and warns of the tendency to stick to rigid patterns with a deep panic to change. Capricorn holds him to believe that there is only one right way to do things and paralyzes all the changes his twin life demands. For his destiny to flow smoothly, he must make the tremendous effort to transform the rigid and persistent Capricorn. So it's common for people with this ascendant to get paralyzed and tense in crystallized beliefs, and not be allowed to go to their ascendant change. They are often trapped in a rage that judges the world unjustly and irresponsibly. At an integration level, Capricorn in the 8th house suggests encouraging himself to question outdated beliefs and turn old mandates of authority for dead in order to risk being faithful to his own and revolutionary feelings. It transcends the expectation of thinking what is right, and it surpasses its disciplined style, understanding that a mind that adheres to rules necessarily suppresses its own freedom. In order to truly learn as your twin destiny requires, you must empty your mind of preconceptions, because a conditioned mind only translates what it already knows. It does not assimilate the new, but it repeats the same known and unalterable structures. If he manages to move away from his Capricornic submissions, he can move from the role of great judge and also transcend his belief in having to fix them on his own and not expecting anyone's help. Liberating yourself from the oppressive Capricorn loneliness can allow you to live a life of unprecedented amount of bonds and unthinkable freedom. To overcome the old Capricorn model is to discover that there is never a single truth, for each one has its own story. Willing not to judge anyone, he can become a receptive witness to a multitude of opinions, and be a bridge between people who seemed impossible to reach any kind of agreement. Resignify Capricorn is knowing how to break down personal, social, intellectual, economic, or political walls to relate equally with anyone, without enlarging or excessively diminishing yourself when compared with others. To be a bridge, to get all people to sit at the same level, neither above nor below, to be able to link the shores and communicate worlds of any social, intellectual, professional, or economic hierarchy. It is likely that, although he does not know it, at the time of the birth of a person with a Gemini descent, his family was going through a crisis of paradigms in which authority figures, or even the father who was in deep crisis, were questioned. Then, throughout his adult life, the person tends to feel, without being aware of the motive, a great need to challenge authority and tradition and to abandon the father's mandates. Taurus in House 12, receptive sensority or dullness that inhibits listening and communication. The 12th sign of the ascendant Gemini is Taurus, and suggests a certain tendency to remain excessively quiet and comfortable in known and safe places, with an excessive difficulty to risk changing. At a level of tension, he settles immovably in familiar spaces, where he believes to protect himself enchanted by rooted fears of the different. Taurus in House 12 can charge him with recklessness to the stranger and meekness and greed that lead him to shut up and to mistrust of everyone. His House 12 in Taurus, slow and invariable, delays his light twin's life, where everything must become mobile and binding. He pretends to be alone and ruminating, but his fate seems to force him to go out and socialize. His unconscious taurine fixation rests and feeds in peace, and would long to remain forever in that quiet where everything is assured. His inertia to remain in situations of safe comfort usually takes him forever to assume his destiny of movement and communication. It is common to see people with Gemini ascendants very tainted, and with angry bullface resisting to move, change, or negotiate any alternative to their thinking. His life will insist on bringing people with whom he must learn to pact, because his fate drives him to overcome his comfort and forces him to learn and to deal with people and situations that do not interest him. If you relax and surrender to what happens at an integration level, Taurus resonating in your memory gives you maximum simplicity to perceive from a basic and innocent mode. The simplicity of his gaze allows him to connect with reality without ideological excuses and without speculating with what he should think or say. The House 12, in Taurus, observes each moment with benevolence and without prejudice, can turn it into an observer deprived of analytical and repetitive load to resonate intuitively with each present experience. Taurus, simple and sensory, also allows you to connect with each person without preconceptions to true communication. It provides a quiet observation and a relaxed listening that does not react or defend itself in the face of the different. Taurus in the House 12 gives him the opportunity to perceive in a receptive state of alertness, and disposes him to listen beyond his own fears and projections, to incorporate the new and the different, and to transmit, with personal prejudices. Summary of the Ascendant in Geminis modality: mutable, seeker; element, air, linker; learning by destination; adaptability in communication; becoming a bridge between worlds; opening minds; being a communicator and negotiator. Tendance: to stay quiet without connecting or communicating. It affects very extroverted people, opinionologists, brothers, cousins, neighbors. Situations that diversify and require you to be in two places at the same time. You must heal the bond with your brothers. Regent planet, Mercury. Parts of the body that rule and of special vulnerability. Lungs, breathing, arms, and hands. Period of basic learning. from 7 to 14 years, which is resignificant between 35 and 42 years. Life mission. Communicator and bridge between worlds that seem irreconcilable. Misinterpretation of his mission. Personality unbelievable by unstable and superficial. Distribution of signs for ascending in Geminis. Their action destination is Geminis. Generate with Cancer. Communicate with Leo. Emotionally stabilize with Virgo. Express yourself with Libra. Organize with Scorpio. Complement with Sagittarius. Transform with Capricorn. Trust Aquarius. Working with Pisces. Open new projects with Aries. Resonate with Taurus. If this ascendant finds a way to integrate these proposals, it will. A communicator's destiny. Generate with sensitive contact. Communicate in creative and generous ways. Be emotionally mature. Show yourself seductive and companion. Organize with intensity and power by complementing each other, trusting and prospering. Transform yourself when you grow up and work. Work with intuition and resonance. Open up to the new by taking risks. Resonate with abundance. If this ascendant does not find a way to integrate these proposals, he will suffer a destiny of instability. Generate immature and dependent resources. Communicate in a self-referential and authoritarian way. Be closed and emotionally prejudiced. Be dubious and unbelievable. Organize with abusive tyranny. Complementing by denying and idealizing. In the face of crises, instead of transforming, become more rigid, work confused, and have your professional projects diluted. Fighting with the new. Resonate with vacancy.